Kevin had always believed that the ocean understood him. As a boy growing up in a small, dusty town miles away from any shoreline, he would sit on the roof of his modest home and listen to recordings of waves crashing against cliffs. While other children dreamed of fast cars or big cities, Kevin dreamed of one thing: a house by the ocean. Not just any house. A house he would build with his own hands. But dreams are light, and life is heavy. Kevin's father worked double shifts at a mechanic's shop, and his mother stitched clothes late into the night to keep food on the table. Money was always counted carefully. There were no vacations, no luxury items, just survival. Yet every time Kevin saw a picture of the sea in a magazine, something inside him stirred. It wasn't just the beauty. It was the feeling of freedom. The endless horizon. The promise that no matter how chaotic life became, the waves would keep returning, steady, patient, powerful. At 17, Kevin wrote in his old notebook, "One day, I will wake up to the sound of waves. And I will know I didn't give up." But the road between dream and reality was long, and merciless. After high school, Kevin couldn't afford college. He took whatever jobs he could find: construction work, warehouse shifts, cleaning offices at night. His hands grew rough. His back ached. His friends moved away, chasing careers and degrees. Sometimes, when exhaustion pressed down on him, the dream felt foolish. One night, after a 14-hour shift pouring concrete, Kevin sat alone on the curb outside his apartment. His clothes were dusty. His body throbbed. He pulled out his old notebook and read his teenage promise. For a moment, he almost laughed. "A house by the ocean," he muttered. "You can barely afford rent." The voice of doubt grew louder with each passing year. "You're not educated enough. You don't earn enough. People like you don't build dream houses by the sea." But Kevin had learned something from the ocean recordings he listened to as a boy. Waves don't stop when they hit rocks. They return. Again. And again. So instead of quitting, Kevin made a quiet decision. If he couldn't afford college, he would educate himself. After work, while others slept, Kevin watched online tutorials about carpentry, architecture, and real estate. He read books borrowed from the local library. He learned how houses stood, how foundations were poured, how beams carried weight. During the day, he worked construction not just for money, but for knowledge. He studied how experienced builders measured twice before cutting once. He asked questions. He volunteered for difficult tasks just to learn. It wasn't glamorous. No one applauded his effort. There were no social media posts about his 3 a.m. study sessions. Growth happened quietly, like roots beneath soil. At 25, Kevin had saved enough to start a small renovation business. It began with fixing broken fences and repainting old kitchens. Slowly, through reliability and hard work, word spread. Kevin was honest. He showed up on time. He cared. Years passed. His business grew from a pickup truck and toolbox to a small team of skilled workers. He wasn't rich, but he was stable. Still, the ocean remained distant. At 32, Kevin faced his biggest setback. A major project fell apart due to a contractor's mistake. The financial loss was heavy. Bills piled up. Stress invaded his sleep. For the first time in years, he considered giving up the dream entirely. Maybe I should just settle, he thought. Maybe dreams are for people born closer to opportunity. One evening, overwhelmed and restless, Kevin drove for hours until he reached the coastline. It was the first time he had seen the ocean in person as an adult. He stepped out of his car. The wind hit his face. The salty air filled his lungs. The horizon stretched endlessly before him. And the waves, those faithful waves, crashed against the shore without hesitation. They didn't ask if they were good enough. They didn't retreat because the rocks were strong. They simply kept moving. Kevin stood there for a long time. tears mixed with ocean spray. In that moment, he realized something powerful: the dream wasn't about luxury. It wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about becoming the kind of man who doesn't quit. He drove home with sand on his shoes, and fire in his heart. The next 5 years were relentless. Kevin expanded his business carefully. He avoided unnecessary risks. He invested wisely. He worked harder than ever, but smarter this time. At 37, he found a small piece of land overlooking the ocean. It wasn't perfect. The terrain was uneven. The price was high. But when he stood there, listening to the waves below, he knew. This was it. Signing the papers felt surreal. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from gratitude. The boy who once listened to ocean recordings on a rooftop had just bought land by the sea. But owning land wasn't the same as building a home. And Kevin had promised himself one thing: he would build it with his own hands. Brick by brick, construction began at sunrise on a cool spring morning. Kevin stood alone on the empty land, holding a shovel. For a moment, doubt whispered again. What if you fail? What if it collapses? What if you're not capable? He took a deep breath. Then he started digging. The foundation was the hardest part, physically and emotionally. Unexpected complications appeared. Weather delayed progress. Costs exceeded estimates. But this time, Kevin wasn't the same tired teenager on a curb. He was experienced. He was patient. He was resilient. Day after day, he worked alongside his small team, but he personally handled the most meaningful parts: laying the first bricks, installing the window that faced the horizon, crafting the wooden front door. He chose wide windows so the ocean could be seen from nearly every room. He built a small balcony where he could sit and listen to the waves at night. Each nail hammered into place carried years of sacrifice. Each wall raised stood on top of countless silent struggles. It took 18 months. 18 months of sweat, stress, and stubborn belief. And finally, one golden evening, the house stood complete. Not massive. Not extravagant. But perfect. The first morning, Kevin moved in quietly. No grand party. No dramatic announcement. Just a simple bed, a wooden table, and the sound of the sea. On his first morning in the house, he woke before sunrise. Soft light filtered through the windows. The ocean shimmered in shades of silver and blue. He stepped onto the balcony barefoot. The waves rolled in steadily, just as they had when he was a boy. He closed his eyes and listened. This wasn't just the sound of water. It was the sound of perseverance. The sound of late nights. The sound of refusing to quit when life said, "Be realistic." Kevin smiled. The dream had never been about escaping struggle. It had been about surviving it. Growing through it. Building despite it. He whispered to himself, "You didn't give up." Over time, neighbors came to know Kevin as the quiet man in the house by the sea. Some assumed he had always been successful. Others thought he must have inherited wealth. They didn't see the construction shifts. The failed projects. The nights of doubt. But Kevin didn't need them to. Every time a storm rolled in and waves crashed harder against the shore, he would stand by the window and watch. The ocean reminded him that strength isn't loud. It's consistent. And sometimes, when young people from nearby towns asked him how he built such a life, Kevin would tell them, "I didn't build this house first. I built myself. Brick by brick. Habit by habit. Decision by decision." Because that was the real secret. The ocean house was just the visible result. The invisible work, the patience, discipline, and resilience, was the true foundation. Years later, Kevin found his old teenage notebook tucked inside a box. He sat on his balcony, ocean breeze flipping through its worn pages. There it was: "One day, I will wake up to the sound of waves. And I will know I didn't give up." He looked up. The waves were still there. Still returning. Still faithful. Kevin realized something beautiful: dreams don't expire because of struggle. They strengthen because of it. The house by the ocean wasn't built in 18 months. It was built over 20 years of refusing to surrender. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and crimson, Kevin felt a quiet pride, not the loud kind that seeks applause, but the steady kind that comes from keeping promises to yourself. The waves whispered below. Not of luck. Not of shortcuts. But of resilience. And Kevin listened, grateful that he had chosen to become like the ocean, unstoppable. Patient. Relentless. Because sometimes, the greatest victory isn't reaching the shore. It's becoming strong enough to build your own, right beside it.